everyone, my name is Luna and I'm here to talk about the massive changes that are headed our way for Campaign 4 of Critical Role. Before we dive in, this video is brought to you by my patrons. A huge thank you to all of these wonderful people. If you'd like to support the channel, you can sign up for as little as $2 a month at patreon.com/Luboffin. Okay, so in case you've been trapped in the astral realm and missed the news, the Critical Role team made a Campaign 4 announcement at their live show yesterday. It also happened to be my birthday, so I count it as like a little birthday present from Critical Role. Thank you. So they made a bunch of announcements. First, that Campaign 4 is going to be starting on the 2nd of October this year. It's going to be in a brand new world. There are going to be new players at the table, and massively, there is going to be a new game master, none other than Brennan Lee Mulligan.
It is a privilege, an honor, and a gift. And if you guys are ready for your next epic adventure, make some noise!
So we're going to break down these announcements one by one. Let's start with our new Game Master. So if you're watching this video, honestly, you probably are familiar with who Brennan is, but just in case, here's like a little overview. Brennan Lee Mulligan is the Dungeon Master for Dimension 20, which is the D&D series over on Dropout. That series is actually, each season is standalone. They have longer seasons that Brennan DMs, which are normally like around 25 episodes, I want to say, and that has a sort of standard cast known as the Intrepid Heroes or the Bad Kids. But they also have shorter seasons where they have different game masters. They sometimes use different game systems and they have very different casts each time. Each season is also like very genre specific. They love to play with different genres, and each of those seasons are kind of standalone apart from a couple of sequels. Brennan has a really, really long history in improv comedy and also in dungeon mastering, so he really kind of leans on those improv skills as a dungeon master or game master. He has also DM'd for Critical Role with EXU Calamity, EXU Downfall, and EXU Divergence, three really fantastic series that I think put to rest this idea that he is not able to do a more serious tone, because when it was sort of announced that he was coming on as a guest game master or dungeon master, people were worried that it was going to be too much of a comedic tone rather than the more serious tone which Critical Role sometimes calls for. Although, I don't know, people say that Critical Role is more serious, but then like they do things like stage orgies in basements. So are they really much more serious? But yeah, those series were really phenomenal, extremely theatrical and narrative rich, and I think for sure Brennan has shown that he's capable of doing those more dramatic, serious moments when it's called for. Most notably, my absolute favorite scene from EXU Calamity.
Now, I'll tell you why I spit on your forgiveness. I'll tell you why I loathe your redemption.
Crown of Candy is another great example of this. That's the Dimension 20 series. From the outside, it looks kind of like fun and silly and happy because it's candy people, but it's actually a really like deep kind of political intrigue campaign. And I haven't listened to it yet, but I've heard that the podcast he is on, Worlds Beyond Number, is also like quite serious in tone. So I think he's more than qualified to run a Critical Role series. Personally, I am thrilled about this change. I think Brennan is an incredible DM. He's extremely quick on his feet, probably from his improv background, and I think he has a real skill for nailing down like the essence of a genre or an archetype and then being able to like flip it or twist it in a way that's really interesting. And he's just such a wonderfully collaborative DM and GM. And he's also just really funny.
No! I'm supposed to be the smarty! No!
Now, don't worry, Matt isn't leaving the Critical Role table. He announced that he is going to be joining the game as a player, which is so exciting to see. The few times that we've seen Matt as a player on the show have just been so wonderful. I think it's going to be really fresh, both for him as a player and also for us as the audience to kind of see what he can do as a player in a long form series. And I think we can all agree that he has spent so much time taking on that responsibility of being a GM and, being kind of there with all of that stuff in the background, that I think it's just going to be so lovely to see him sit back and enjoy experiencing a world as a character. Now, of course, Daggerheart has a very collaborative style between the players and the game masters, so we saw a little bit of that come out in Age of Umbra, where Matt started to ask the players to describe the world. So he is still going to have input into world building along with all of the other players, but it will be, I think, really nice to see him kind of surprised by the world in a new way that we haven't always seen that much of before. And also, Brennan is not going anywhere with Dimension 20. I will admit that was actually my first fear because I love Dimension 20 and I was a bit worried that him joining Critical Role would mean he couldn't keep doing those shows as well. But Brennan announced on his Instagram, I think also on his Twitter, that he is basically just signed a 3-year contract with Dropout to continue developing and running Dimension 20, as well as working on new shows. So basically just means we're going to be getting like more of Brennan, which I'm a fan of. I think this combination of two absolute powerhouses of game masters, Matthew Mercer and Brennan Lee Mulligan, in the same campaign is just going to be so phenomenal. I think we're going to be totally blown away. So let's move on to the announcement that this campaign is going to be in a new world. I take new world to mean no more Exandria, and honestly, I was shocked. I thought for sure that Campaign 4 was going to stay in Exandria to sort of ease the transition into Daggerheart, which I'm going to talk about Daggerheart in a bit. But no, it seems like we're going to be jumping into something completely fresh. You know, we don't know anything about the new world yet, except maybe we're going to start somewhere like icy and mountainous. I don't know, just from the like announcement video. Honestly, if you had asked me a couple of days ago how I would feel if they announced that they were doing a new world, I think I would have said I'd feel sad. But honestly, now that the announcement has come, I'm actually really looking forward to a bit of a fresh start. You know, Campaign 3 was incredible, but it did get pretty, I don't know, like bogged down is not the right word, but it was really tied to a lot of the previous lore from previous campaigns. And I know that that was a big challenge for newer viewers who hadn't watched Campaign 1 or Campaign 2. They really pitched Campaign 3 at the beginning of like, you don't need to have watched anything else. But then there were just so many connections to prior campaigns, which were really fun and fulfilling as a longtime critter. But it does mean that the world starts to just feel a bit restricted in a way. Obviously, there are lots of places in Exandria that we haven't been to, so I kind of thought maybe Campaign 4 would take place in those areas. But, you know, overall, we have had some world-shattering things happen in Campaign 3, and we have had like the rise of these incredibly legendary heroes, you know, Vox Machina, Mighty Nine. Bell's Hells are now infamous. They're not necessarily well loved or received, but, you know, they're also very well known now after the events of Campaign 3. And so realistically, how many times can you do that? Can you have these kind of big galactic, or maybe galactic's not the right word, but like planetary heroes before it does start to feel a little bit ridiculous? Honestly, my prediction for Campaign 4 was that it was going to take place in Exandria, but there was going to be a big time skip, which would allow some freshness into the world, because maybe if it was like, you know, 1,000 years in the future, Exandria could look really different, but there would still be some elements that would be familiar to critters. So that was kind of my big prediction, but clearly I am quite wrong. I mean, some people have speculated that New World just means it's just referring to Exandria as a new world because the events of Campaign 3 changed the world so much. But I think with Matt as a player, it makes so much sense to have a completely new setting, because I know he talked about that difficulty a little bit in Exandria Unlimited, where he was a player and he purposefully played a character who basically didn't really engage with the world on a intellectual or historical way, because he wanted to be able to just enjoy playing and not be tied up in the lore that he already knew about the world. So a fresh start, a fresh world means that he can just fully commit to a character and not sort of feel this weight of all of this stuff behind him that he's written, that people he works with has written. You know, it can just sort of be a new beginning. So the question is, who is developing this new world? I mean, I think it's probably pretty apparent that Brennan will be playing a big role in that. However, we can't deny the fact that there are some absolute powerhouses of story developers now working at Darrington Press. Of course, we have Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford, who recently jumped over from Wizards of the Coast, where they had been writing for Dungeons & Dragons for a very long time and had both taken or been given a lot of the credit for the success of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. They also recently announced that Keith Baker and Jen Ellis are coming on board, the creators of the Eberron setting. And they've also, like, there's just been a flurry of announcements. Like, they announced as well that there's going to be a romantasy setting that they're working on. And we've heard that Chris is working on, like, a scary, spooky setting. I don't think it's necessarily going to be one of the worlds that they've already talked about, because by the fact that there are just like bam, bam, bam announcements about all different settings already happening, I don't think it would be weird for there to be like another one and also another setting, you know, from a business perspective, it works out well because it means like new campaign frames, new setting books, new classes and things. They've already started releasing new classes and abilities to sort of fit in with the stuff that we're used to seeing on Critical Role. So yeah, I think it will probably be something completely new, but I'm sure we're going to be getting some kind of setting information or setting books, which I think will be so exciting. Personally, I love setting books. I just think they're so fun to dive into and to learn the lore of like a made-up world. It's really fun. All right, let's move on to the announcement of a new cast. Now, the announcement in the like actual video used the very vague phrase new heroes, which, you know, you could just interpret as like new characters. But Matt elaborated on Instagram saying that they would be unveiling newer faces that join the OG cast. So I definitely take that as some of the OG cast stepping back to make way for those new faces. From what I've seen online, this seems like the toughest change for critters to come to grips with, which I completely understand. You know, we have had the same cast and the same format for 10 years now, and for a lot of people, Critical Role is their comfort show or their comfort media. It's just something that feels very familiar, and we're very used to that dynamic between all of the players. But I've been predicting for over a year now that this would be the case, and granted, I did think that maybe Campaign 4 would have mostly the core cast and more sort of rotating guests a lot more, kind of like how they actually did end up doing a fair bit in Campaign 3, you know, before they announced an official cast change. And to be fair, we might still get that. Like, they might be saying there's going to be new faces at the table, but it's going to be more of like a guest situation. However, I really don't feel that that's the case. I think that they are really preparing us for some big changes at the table. And, you know, as disappointing as this is for some critters, I think it was inevitable. As someone who has turned many hobbies into jobs over the years, it can actually get really draining, you know, and obviously they still love the game, but it can just, when you turn something that you love into your job, and especially a job like theirs, which has a huge audience, a lot of pressure, a lot of money involved, I think that, you know, it would be completely understandable, for me at least, that some of them would maybe want to take a step back and be able to engage with tabletop games again, perhaps as more of a hobby. Plus, they have a lot of other exciting projects that cast members may want to focus on. So, you know, obviously there is Daggerheart, Darrington Press, all of that, but we've got the animated series, they've announced they're currently working on a video game, you know, they've released music albums, and they've got their comic series and the art books and the fiction books as well, like Tusk Love. Like, there are so many projects that they are working on, and I think maybe some of the cast members might find it more exciting and stimulating to go and work on some of those projects for a while, so it's still related to the thing that they love, but it's like a new thing that they're doing. Also, I think something that's really important, which I'm going to say, look, I'm going to call us out, why people sometimes get upset about, is that I think they have wanted to increase diversity at their table. You know, they're all friends, and I absolutely don't fault them starting the show with all of them as friends, as a fully white cast. I get that. But I think at some point when it becomes such a large business, and I know people get cross about that, but I'm sorry, it's a multi-million-dollar business. They want to show that their business is reflecting their own values. And I think diversity is one of their values. And if they continue to just have a fully white cast, they're not really showing that they're committed to increasing diverse stories in tabletop games. Now, I know people are going to get cross at me. I'm just going to say I'm happy for people to chat in the comments, but like anything rude, disrespectful, or downright racist, I will just block and delete. So just keep that in mind. Personally, I think diversity is such a valuable part of storytelling, and especially this kind of collaborative storytelling, because when you have people from different backgrounds and different cultures, they can bring a whole new perspective to the table. They can tell new stories that we're not familiar with that are exciting and interesting to us, and I just think it is only a positive, yeah? So I'm not blaming the cast for all being white and being friends, but I think the moves that they've been making to including more diverse stories at the table is just a really super positive one. And so I imagine that this kind of is part of that change. I hope that I worded that correctly, because I haven't scripted this video. I'm really talking off the cuff, and I hope I got across what I was trying to say in a correct and respectful way. So maybe I'm in the minority, but yeah, I think it's honestly great that we are going to get a little bit of a cast shakeup and some new people. because it needs new character dynamics, new inside jokes to be created, and I don't know, just new talent. And overall, I just trust that the people that they bring onto the show are going to be good for the show, like we have seen them do many times before. And some of my favorite moments, honestly, from Critical Role have come from guests, like Deborah Ann Wall as Twiggy. I absolutely loved. Abu Bakar's reprisal of the Archheart was incredible. I loved the intrigue of Erica's character Dusk and the relationships formed with Deanna. And like, who could forget the infamous Spurt? Not to mention Robbie as Dorian, who was originally a character from a short form series that ended up like completely stealing all of our hearts until people basically were just like, you have to have Robbie for campaign 4. He's kind of considered a core cast member now. All right, so let's talk about maybe who isn't coming back. And let's be clear, no one is going away forever. I think they're always, the OG cast, the founding cast are always going to be at the table, whether it's in miniseries or joining for short periods during the main campaign, you know, working on all their projects and stuff like that. I think, I don't think any of them are going away for good at all. But yeah, let's maybe have a think about who might not be coming back for the entirety of C4. And I wonder if Travis and Marisha might sit this one out due to their increasingly expansive role, like behind the scenes for the company. Obviously, Travis is the CEO and Marisha is the creative director. And with so many new projects on the horizon, I imagine that their workload is quite full. Same with Sam, who's been heavily involved in the animated series. And of course, whoever's working on the video games, like that's got to be a lot of work as well. It's kind of hard to say though. And also we have to remember that we don't know anything about their personal lives, nor should we. You know, there could be things going on behind the scenes too that would make would make players want to step back from the table for a while and have a bit of a break, which I think is completely understandable and reasonable. And then this leads us to the other question of who is leaving. It leads us to who is joining. And of course, who knows? They've worked with so many people over the years, and it could be that they're bringing some of those people back. Matt did use the word newer faces, so that doesn't necessarily mean like completely new. We might see some familiar faces who've played guests before. Of course, I'm mega hoping that Robbie is going to be joining as a permanent cast member because he's just amazing and a fantastic fit at the table. I would also love to see Nick Marini. He was absolutely amazing as the Dawnfather. He blew me away. And I also really loved Celia Rose Gooding in EXU Divergence. But yeah, I don't know. Let me know in the comments who you would want to see at the table. I think it's going to be really exciting to see those announcements come out. I'm sorry, I feel like I've said exciting about 50 times this video, but it's really exciting. I just want to say I absolutely do understand that some people are going to take the news of a new cast badly, or not badly, but are going to feel sad about it or upset about it. And I think that's completely justified and okay. I think it's what we do with those feelings that's important. So obviously not like harassing Critical Role cast members or whatever. I've seen a little bit of that, but not very much. So I just want to say, even though I'm feeling okay about the cast changes, I fully empathize with those of you who are not feeling so good about it. All right, let's talk about game system. So in this announcement, they did not confirm which game system they're going to be using, D&D or Daggerheart. There's been a lot of speculation online. Guys, I'm just going to say it. It is going to be Daggerheart. There is no world in which they have spent millions of dollars, had two of the lead designers from D&D join their company to not use Daggerheart. It's just not going to happen. And I'm actually... I'm a little flabbergasted that some people are still holding on to this idea that it's going to be D&D. It isn't. I mean, I will fully admit my wrongness. I don't know, let's say I'll donate $100 to the Critical Role Foundation if I'm wrong. I mean, I should do that anyway. I'll probably do that anyway, even if I'm right. But I just fully am committed to the idea of it being Daggerheart. They even had Jeremy and Chris on stage for this announcement. They've been partnering with so many third parties, and using D&D would just demonstrate a complete lack of faith in their own game. I mean, why would they say to a customer, we have built an amazing game that is designed to tell the kinds of stories that we've been telling for 10 years, and we think it's the best thing out there. However, we're not going to use it for our show. We're going to use D&D. I mean, it's just not happening. I know I was wrong about some of my other campaign 4 predictions, but this one I am certain about. Some people have commented online that, again, they are not feeling good about the change to Daggerheart because they're finding it hard to follow the system. But if that is you, I just want to say, like, give it some time. It was the same for me when I started listening to D&D actual plays. I'd never played before, so I didn't know any of the rules of D&D. And, you know, just over time, you do pick it up. Or, you know, if you want more in-depth information, the rules are available for free, so you can also read through that. And, of course, I will be here to break down episodes for you and to cover some of those big rules as well. So you will get there. I promise it will start to make sense. And if you haven't tried playing Daggerheart and you're interested, I really recommend giving it a go. I've been running a Daggerheart game and really enjoying it. Obviously, I'm still finding my feet as the game master for it, but yeah, it's really fun. All right, so what now? We know that the game is starting in October. Obviously, that is a little while away. It's currently August right now. I wouldn't be surprised if we get another Daggerheart miniseries in the interim to tide us over. Maybe we will get like a little EXU style game in the new world to sort of introduce it to us. I don't know if that will happen. I feel like they might want to save the hype for Campaign 4 starting. But I imagine we are going to get like some hype videos for Campaign 4. Maybe we'll get some setting information. Maybe we'll get a Session 0. We do know that they are going to do an Age of Umbra Season 2. It's unclear when that's happening. I would be a little surprised if they do it immediately. I'm also kind of hoping that they don't. I did enjoy Age of Umbra, but it didn't fully grab me, as evidenced by the fact that I still haven't finished my finale recap. Sorry. I think it will be fun to see that, but I'm not ready for it right now. All we can really do now is speculate about what Campaign 4 is going to be like and wait for more details. So let me know in the comments what you're hoping for Campaign 4. What are your Campaign 4 wishes? What kind of world do you want it to be? Who's going to be sitting at the table? What kind of stories? What kind of ships? I don't know, just go crazy. Let me know in the comments. I'm going to do sort of a whole video on my Campaign 4 wishes and sort of what you will put out there as well in the comments. But overall, I'm honestly hoping for a smaller scale story. I think we've had stories get exponentially bigger and bigger and bigger throughout the series, the 3 campaigns. And I really want to go back to just a small little setting, you know, some small problems that are kind of fun at low level. The local bandits are increasing their activity and you got to go deal with that. Or like a mayor for a small town is corrupt. So some sort of smaller scale stories rather than these big like world ending epics, which are fun. But I think I need a little break from that. And on that topic, I'm kind of hoping that we get a more lighter feel for Campaign 4. I think that a lot of the content for Critical Role lately has been quite dark and heavy over the last year or so. Maybe that's just the direction that they're moving in general, but I personally hope that we get something, I don't know, a little lighter, a little more shenanigans based. I don't know. I think I just need something as a bit of a palate cleanser before the next like heavy, grim, dark thing. However, whatever they've got cooking up, I am sure it's going to be delicious. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new so you can see all of my breakdowns as they come out. And if you want somewhere else to chat, you can jump into my Discord. There's a link in the description. We have a live watch party each week and we have a bunch of Critical Role channels to chat. And also, if you want to revisit my Campaign 4 predictions and see just how off base I was, although honestly, I think I nailed quite a few of them, that video is right here. I'm sorry if this video wasn't as like tight as usual. It was a bit rambly. I didn't script it. Normally I'm a bit more scripted. But yeah, I'm rambling right now as I'm talking. But yes, I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments and I'll see you next time. Bye!